So let's go back and talk about ZvT strategy, build order. So in terms of build order and kind of goals here, we can refer back to your notes and that sort of stuff. You're often going 17 pool, 17 hatch. You got your gas, queen, overlord lings, and you've been going for a 22 third expansion hatch. At least that's what you've written down as your build order. So let's see, did we do that this game as well?
I don't know. Probably tried to. Sometimes it's a little late. I usually go for it though.
Well, that's a pretty fast, like it's a very fast hatchery actually for a pool first to be going for like a 22 third hatch, because you see that would already be down even now. Now we can see we didn't send the drone down on time for that. So already we could just be like, hey, wait a second. If we want to build our hatch at that time, we want to make a habit of sending a drone down there ahead, right? So this drone that's popping here, perfect timing, right? So you could make a habit. You could say 20-second drone. When you build that drone, you click it to your third hatch. And then it's going to arrive there basically just as you get 300 minerals each game, which is kind of cool, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is, we don't need to be doing fancy extractor tricks here, right? I think you're doing this just...
Unfortunately.
You did, but it's meant to be 22 third hatch, right? So the thing is, you should be saving money, building the hatchery, Overlord pops your outer supply block. It's a planned supply block. This is what we call pretending we didn't make a mistake. But seriously, it does actually make sense. So going down to your build, we can literally send our 20-second drone right there from the egg, right? Do you ever rally your eggs like that? Just right-click the egg? Awesome.
Yeah, like the naturals almost always that process,
so
I believe.
That's kind of that literally is the only way a 22 third hatch makes sense, and I'm okay with it. I think this would not be the worst. It's definitely not the greatest though, because this does slow down your queen. So why am I letting you do a build that doesn't make sense? Yeah, let's just rewrite your build. Because we really want to get the extra queen up so we can get more injects going. Also because we need a queen to defend. Like if a Reaper does come in and is really annoying, you know, we want to have a queen defending both bases. Let's just go to the top. Let's ignore your build here for now. Let's go up to the top and write out some goals for ZvT. All right, ZvT. All right, so you can head for the third hatch a bit later, more like I don't know, 25 supply, I'm imagining. But basically just when you have the minerals, the important thing is make sure we go 21 overlord, so not supply blocked, okay?
Right.
Make sure we get our second queen started before first finishes, right? So that we're getting so she injects and then she moves down to the natural, right? This first queen that pops out. Also, always build 2 lings, or 2 to 4 lings, and shift click them to dodge the Reaper and arrive in the enemy natural.
Just kind of go on the sides to get around.
Yeah, just give it a single click on the maybe. Can you see where I'm signaling on the minimap?
Yeah, I got it.
Maybe there, then there, and that way the Reaper arrives at your base. Your lings arrive there. If you click them on the SCV on the command center, thumbs up. If you don't, and you literally don't even look at them, who cares? It's fine. Doesn't cost you anything. It's going to totally mess him up if he comes across the map with this Reaper like he does. Because your opponent, lazy, didn't SCV scout. And the whole point of a pool first is not only do we get the queens up to defend, but even just 2 or 4 lings totally ruins his opening if those guys come in here and kill this SCV before the command center finishes. And that normally times out if you do that shift click. So the Reaper will arrive at your natural just as your lings walk in right about now, which is awesome.
Okay. So when am I building these 2 to 4 lings? Like what's the
moment that the pool finishes. So it's like along with the queen starting basically. Yeah.
Okay. So earlier. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could do that every matchup as well. You could maybe not to dodge a Reaper. Maybe you just click them straight across the map to like run in, scout, maybe kill a drone or a probe or 2 versus Protoss and Zerg, and you might actually be able to get a fair bit of damage. Like, the number of times, like if you just go pool first, you could actually kill someone with your first 6 lings in ZvP is kind of hilarious because people just fuck up their opening. Like Protoss players do that pretty regularly. And they don't build a Zealot or anything, and they're just a bit late on their Cyber Core, so their Adept or Stalkers out a bit late. You depower their gateway and basically win the game with what is barely hurting your economy at all, building a few lings there. So that's like a really nice.
Early, basically, they're just not ready.
Yeah, and they kind of think it's a normal build because your hatchery is still pretty fast. Like even if they scout with a probe, but then they're like, oh, how are these lings here 30 seconds earlier than normal? Oh no.
Okay, so I build the queen, and then I build the let's see, when does the queen happen right now?
So
you
let's
said
go
I
back
put
to when
the
your pool
hatch
starts.
down. Yeah.
Your pool finishes is here.
Right.
So yeah,
Okay.
right here. So normally, a rule with any pool first opening, always stop at 18 supply, waiting for a pool to finish, right? Is the trick.
Okay.
Because then it's queen plus 2 lings equals 21 supply. Or
Got
queen
it.
plus 4 lings equals you're at 22 supply. Either way, the next thing you need to do is build an overlord either way.
Right. Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so just stop at 18. Don't add that extra drone.
That's
Wait
it.
for the pool to finish. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that way, because you get the 50 minerals, means the queen starts like 2-3 seconds faster than you build the zerglings, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. Either one of those is pretty chill. And just make sure you start the next queen before this one finishes, right? So right about here, or earlier. Doesn't really matter if you've got the extra money, right? And that way, this one injects, moves to the natural, which I think you did inject and move to the natural, but we didn't build the extra queen in the main. And that's part of your build, because you've been doing the quick third hatch. But we'll slow that third down just a little bit. And you can imagine if we're building that queen right now and stuff, yeah, about 25, 26 supply, somewhere around here. It's probably going to be like naturally getting enough to start the hatchery anyway.
Right.
The difference is, of course, that like, you know, you told it to build from your main base like about 35 seconds from now, back at like, you know, 2 minutes on the dot. Whereas we'll be starting at more about 2 minutes 30, yeah?
Yeah, that's how I do ZvZ, because I'm not building that third hatch early. Kind of trying to do so that feels natural for that, but I like doing it here too. That's totally fine.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
And
All right.
it could be really cool to put some pressure on them earlier as well. So.
Do you normally pull off gas after ling speed?
I'm supposed to. Sometimes I do. I don't think I did this time.
No worries.
So it's
That's cool.
something I mean to, but depending on what's going on, sometimes I forget.
That's all good. We can do that in future. And yeah, like things like this, the Reaper here, we'd have the Queen out. Now, let's talk the next fundamental of ZvT. But this is actually... Whoa, what the hell? Stupid autofill. Anyways, Overlord positioning is really, really crucial, right? So if you want to put your Overlord on the pillar or over here, that's fine. You're sending a second Overlord across, so you can have one to sacrifice. So that does give you less vision by default. Totally fine if you want to do this, right? But we've got to have our priorities. And this Overlord here achieves very little in your natural, right? So we want to always think about what is the priorities. And it's getting an Overlord out here to see kind of the Reaper ledge and just that front attack avenue. Then getting an Overlord out here. So we've got the 2 front areas covered. And usually you want a bit more than that as well, right? Because like, okay, we want to kind of maybe shuffle so we can get an Overlord there and an Overlord here. So we could like really see anywhere where these guys are coming from, right? Ahead of time, the Hellions. So normally it's going to be...
bad at that, yeah.
Yeah, so just think of it as like 3 Overlords usually to get full vision outside your natural and third. And then you fill in the edges with number 4 and 5. And this is obviously after your first 2 across the map. So it's pretty late that you're going to get that vision on the edges, but it just gives you so much more information about what's going on. Means you're not surprised by the Reapers jumping up the cliffs as much, Hellion drops, Hellions diving in the front, running around your queens, all this sort of stuff you'll get way better at with experience. So it's a really good habit because you can apply the same concept versus Protoss, allows you to see adepts and where the oracles are coming from. Zerg gives you good vision of where the Ling Bane's coming in from and if they've got overlords around your base, right? So it's just a really good habit because this is like, once again, is this going to win you games instantly? No, but it's going to build you a really good habit that's going to like just give you more information for your next 1,000 games. Every game you ever play, basically. We're going to give you that little 1% boost by having more awareness in the early game around your bases. Going to get less surprised by bullshit.
Yeah, sounds great.
So I'm giving this its own kind of little subheading because it's not really part of the build. It's more just a habit. So we're going to stick to what you're doing. First 2 overlords to scout, right, across map.
Yep.
And then its next 3 provide ring of vision outside natural and third. So, and the habit for this is obviously build the overlord, click on the minimap. When every time you're building an overlord, you click it to the minimap and you kind of know, oh, I've got one going there. Next time I'm building an overlord just as part of my build, click it to the next spot. And so on. So you're just kind of building that habit so it's a natural part of your Overlord production. It's not something you have to remember separately, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's being deliberate about where they're going.
Heck yeah. And it's actually such a good feeling once this becomes like a default habit. And I'll tell you, the Protoss and the Terran players just hate it because they're like, man, they just always see everything and just move to respond. It's bullshit. You know, Zerg just gets these free scouts everywhere. They're never surprised by anything. Next,
if you don't use them.
Or you could be like the F2 players are my favorite because they just set their rally point to the enemy base. And then, like, if you defend their push, there's like 14 overlords that fly into your base after you've killed the Zerg army, and you're like, wait, what is this? You're like, really? They're just slow overlords running into their death. You're like, oh my god.
I don't use F2, but I do that sometimes. I think I started to here. And then
oh yeah, we've got a few overlords. Ah.
Yeah, I catch them somewhere along the way, but yeah.
Oh no. Oh, that's so sick, dude. All right, so all right. Okay, cool. So beyond that, you're playing roaches for safety every game, or because you go roach warren and baneling nest this game, and that's something which is very convoluted. Normally we want to play like a roach style or a baneling style. Roach baneling can work, and especially against Protoss, we see like, you know, Ravagerling Bane's very popular. But is this something you normally do, or was this like, oh, he's got Hellions, I want roaches because he's got a lot of them?
Yeah, that's really what it is. I usually throw down the, and maybe I don't need to do this, but I usually throw down the baneling nest just in case get hit by bio. But then if I see Hellions somewhere along the way, then if I remember, I will then add a roach warren because they're usually better against Hellions.
So what's really key here is you're trying to do way too much mental gymnastics with the reactions, and in general, it's better to just do one thing well, and banelings are just fine. Having enough lings is just fine versus Hellions. I know it's a bit rough if they come like Hellbats, but banelings are fine versus that. So the thing is, if we go banelings and roaches, it's like you're kind of going two things that cover the same threats in the early stage, and then you're just going to have less of both. And it's going to be like, oh, I have banelings with no bane speed because I'm only making the roach upgrades, or I forgot roach speed because I was making bane speed, or I'm having to make both upgrades, it just costs more. And then you also build a spine in each base. So the thing is, we could defend. This is just a standard, just a group of Hellions. We could handle this with just a bit of creep spread, couple queens, and then lings if they try to run past the queens, right? So definitely something that's more standard is building a few more queens. If you don't want to focus on those queens, that's fine. Roaches make your life really easy because you could just use those like more mobile queens. Oh, I just have like, okay, he's got Hellions. I'll build 8 roaches, you know, split them up, half on this side, half on that side. And, you know, just chase the Hellions off with them and go back to droning really hard. But like that's all I build. I don't have anything else, right? Like maybe a couple Zerglings in the back, but we definitely don't need spines and roaches and banelings because your economy ends up in the absolute dumps. Check this out.
Yeah, so hit really hard. I normally don't go with a bunch of spines, but I felt like after my initial push kind of failed, and I saw all those. I saw all the Hellions, and then I was worried that Zerglings weren't going to be able to hold them. I was like, and I didn't have the roach warren yet. I was like, okay, I'm basically naked at this point. I'm going to get destroyed if I don't do something. But I guess I still see what you're saying. It's really expensive to put.
Yeah, everywhere. And I mean, in hindsight, what is it? It's 5-6 Hellions. You can surround that with Zerglings, right? That's fine. Yeah. You don't even need the baneling nest. So to go the baneling nest, the roach warren, and the spines, you know, if you had nothing, you're like, you know what? I'm not even going to build Zerglings. I'm going to try and distract him with another 6 Zergling counterattack and just drone because I'm behind. I'm consciously taking this risk, and I'm just going to build these spines. And other than that, I'm droning like a mother trucker. But I got a spine in each mineral lane in case those Hellions dive. They'll eventually stop it. That's like a real pointed gamble. I don't like it as a play in terms of like optimal choice, but I like it in terms of like I'm making a conscious risk, right? And it's clearly weighted in one regard. Whereas what you've done in this game is you're like, I'm worried about this thing. I'm going to get this to counter it, that to counter it, that to counter it, and I'm going to build a shitload of Zerglings as well. And it's like, wait, which one are we? You know, we're kind of we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're panicking. We're kind of just like everything. So general benchmark. 5 minutes, you should have your 3rd mineral lane completely full of workers. Yeah. Now, that's if it's a pretty chill game. It won't always be that way. But in this game, your natural isn't even full of workers at this time.
Right.
Your natural should be full by 3:45. So some general aspirational benchmarks. I mean, actually, I'll give you super aspirational benchmarks. I'll give you real hard ones. Okay, okay. Which you won't actually hit at all. But let's say 340 natural full of workers, right? And that's around the time you put back on gas as well. So that's 19 workers in the main plus 16 in the natural, 35 workers, right? At 3 minutes 30, 3 minutes 40. And then at 4 minutes 45, third base full of workers. Now this is obviously not including gases.
Right, it's fine.
But it's the minerals first, which is like the really important part of your economy. So like if we go back to 340, 330, 340, let's check like where was your economy there? And was it all that far behind? Probably not, but the Reaper does get a bunch of drones in here. It kills like 4 drones, distracts you. That also distracts you from like injecting and like, you know, keeping your production up. Second Queen was a little late. So you could see how like just these little bits of damage early slow you down. Plus you never pulled the drones off gas. So that was 3 drones not mining minerals. And it's this early slowdown, which can really spiral very hard, right? Because now your queens aren't in position to be injecting. So you're missing injects now. And, you know, you're microing Zerglings, which is fun, but like it's coming at a really big cost. And now you're going, oh, well, I'm attacking with my Lings. I'm doing damage. Awesome. I'm going to build more Lings. And that there is the #1 decision you need to break away from.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Like, you know, this is something where I didn't used to do this early pressure. And I would always actually have all 3 bases, you know, at 5. Pretty much saturated, but then I started doing this pressure, which I really like, but I'm not sure when to stop, right? Like when should I say, okay, that's enough, let's get back to economy?
Well, you should have decided ahead of time is the trick, right? So the problem is you're looking at things in the game and you're trying to respond to them. Okay. And the thing is you're going, oh, I did damage, let's build more units. It's too late. By the time you build those units, they get across the map. It's like, well, this guy's already had Lings in his base for the last minute. What are you counting on him just being asleep, right? Because all you're doing is more. What's working now, it'll work 2 minutes from now. If your opponent's a moron, yes. Or if they're already basically dead, yes. But you know what's even smarter is I've already got a massive amount of value out of like 6 Lings. This is awesome. Yeah. I'm droning behind it. I'm getting way ahead, right? Whereas any attack you do is a gamble because you don't know if it's going to do damage or not, right? But anytime you build workers, unless they come and kill all those workers and kill you, it's not a gamble, right? They're always going to mine money and turn into more of an advantage. So the trick here isn't that building workers is always better than building army. It's when you go for army, you always build drones behind it. And you usually have decided that beforehand, right? So you're moving across, you've got your army. Let's go back to the point because it's really important to look at the point. At this point, you've already committed to your 8 Zerglings in this scenario.
Right.
Right? You've already committed to your 8 Zerglings. Now, would I have liked you to group them up before going in? Yes, which it does appear you do. Good. But you should already be like, cool, that's it. All I'm doing is injecting and droning behind this. That's all I'm doing. And you know what? His Reaper's annoying me. So I'm going to click my Lings straight on in there, try to run past the bunker. Okay, his Marines are very annoying. They're a bit of a nuisance. But you know what? We got some damage. Even at this point, I would already be like, cool, maybe I even hold position or just A-move the Lings because it's not even worth my APM. I'm like, dude, I need to be injecting. Injecting, building drones, injecting, pulling off gas, whatever, putting back on gas, whatever we're doing in our build. But the important thing is you've already got the value out of it. Try not to base your strategic decisions of do I build army or economy over like, oh, is this fight going well? If you see an attack coming and it looks really scary, sure, change the game plan from building drones to build army, right? Oh, there's a big army coming. Shit, build army to be safe. That's necessary. But if you're like, oh, this looks like this is going well, let's do more of it. No, because you should, if you're playing proper StarCraft, already have your next attack lined up, which is going to be more efficient and more well-planned and more logical because it's something you do every game, right?
Gotcha. Thanks for the Bezos.
You're like, I always go for my big 1-1 roach bust with roach speed. So I should obviously just head to that. And if I'm doing damage here, it's got even more chance of working than normal because I've already crippled them. But if you start building Zerglings now, you can kind of start just getting less and less efficient because what you're doing is you're doubling down as, on like we said, it's the same thing you've already been doing for the last minute.
It's the same tack, you'll have more defense the second time.
So if you're shoving roaches on a PROTOSS player, what are they building? Immortals, zealots, things to like try and survive, right? That's why you swap into muters. If you're being really aggressive, you do a round of muters as like a really cute planned tech switch against anyone. If they're really busy dealing with ground units, that's all they're focused on. right? So you do something different. You drone up and do something that's further down the tech tree, right? If you're going mass roach against a Terran, they're making tons of tanks. And then you get Vipers out, right? So you're always like, your next steps can be planned out to take advantage of what you're forcing from your opponent. That's where we can kind of funnel our opponent into bad decisions. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just gonna. So I was gonna ask if sometimes, especially with PROTOSS, you don't just cripple them. You really feel like they're on their last leg, and they are. How do you know when to stop versus, hey, this guy's pretty much dead. I just need to keep this attack up, and I'm gonna win early. Versus, like you said, just going into drone, or maybe Terran's a bad example because they're gonna recover and they can't really be beat early on like this.
I would say your next attack should be planned out to be aggressive enough that it's still going to be a better way of killing them. I think if you're worrying about that, it's because you're probably playing too airy-fairy, like in this game, where your normal next plan is too indecisive, and it's just like, oh, I kind of get this, and I do a bit of that, I do a bit of that. But if you always have a timing attack in mind, your natural next step that's pre-planned is already going to be somewhat of a kill move or have the potential to kill. So the fact that they're already on their last legs now means they'll definitely die to that later. Rather than doing the, oh, I'll just keep doing this one thing I'm doing. Like, hey, no, get the upgrades, get the timing going that normally works for us. It's going to work even better than normal. So that's going to be really a nice kind of thing in our head, right? To be, okay, yeah, that's going to make things just absolutely beautiful. So if we fast forward in this game, like the moment I saw the Roach Warren, I was like, oh no. Because like you're going different unit compositions, different paths. It's like, hey, and then we're going Roaches, but we're also going Spire for Mutas. These are kind of usually very different tech paths. And we do finally catch up on economy, but you know, we could have been so far ahead on that economy much earlier. So from here, it's like, okay, we're getting Carapace, Overlord speed, and melee, and Roaches, and an Infestation Pit. And there's a Spire that we're not using. This is this is box art StarCraft. You know, like the back of the box as a kid where they'd always have a fight with one of every unit from each race to make it look cool. And you'd go, oh, what's that unit? What's that unit? You know, this is like a lot of people get into this trap where they're trying to play reactive StarCraft and they start playing box art StarCraft where it's like, no, like if we're playing Roach, we should be going range upgrades. And when 1-1 and Roach speed finishes, and we should already have our drone count in mind, maybe 3 bases of drones. So maybe like you're a bit under saturation. So say 66 drones or maybe 60. Maybe we're a little under mineral saturation or we're missing 1 gas. And then we'd be like, okay, those upgrades are lining up. We're doing nothing but build Roaches. Maybe we're starting the 4th, so we have a transition. But then you're like, okay, cool. Make some Ravages. And all right, Roach speed, 1-1 are going to finish in 30 seconds. Let's start moving out, making Ravages. We're going to go for a big attack. And behind that, I'm droning, taking the gases on the 4th base, and I'm adding a Hydra Den to add Hydras. And we're going to go for like a 2. And then after the attack's done, I'll start 2-2 Hydra upgrades, and I'll go for like a Roach Hydra 2-2 push to follow up, right? And it's like, that's just planned before the game even starts. It's just big 1-1 push with Roach Ravager into big 2-2 Roach Hydra push. And a lot of people will be like, oh, well, I tried that and it didn't work one or two games, right? So I stopped doing it. And the trick is, like, you messed up your execution and you started changing the strategy rather than improving that execution or understanding like where the attack went wrong. It's really good, you know, keep embracing losing and do strategies and let them fail, and you'll learn so much more from that. So that's what this, like, having these pre-planned attacks, it also like really improves your game sense and your understanding because you're doing a repeatable attack. And you can see the difference between, as you get experience with that, like, oh, I got supply blocked 4 times and I lost 15 drones to a Liberator. That's why my attack didn't work, because I hit 2 minutes later than I normally do. I meant to hit at 8 minutes 30 with like 160 supply of 1-1 Roach. I hit at 10 minutes 30 with 150 supply of Roach. It was 2 minutes later and I had 10 less supply. Oh shit, right? But then you see the difference between, actually, I hit a really good time, 830, 160 supply, 1-1 Roach. He had 4 tanks on the high ground of his natural behind a wall and didn't even have, and he just lifted his 3rd and ran his SCVs away, and I ran up the choke point and lost all of my Roaches. Okay, that's a situation where it's like, I played good strategically. It's just like, tactically, I should have pulled back and just kept denying his 3rd and transitioned up the tech tree. Maybe I could have added Vipers for like Blinding Cloud or something like that, right? Versus the tanks. Or I could have just waited for him to move back out into the open to retake the 3rd, and then I could have come in, right? I just can't attack up a ramp into a ton of tanks behind a wall off, right? So we're trying to create repeatable situations so you can really develop that game sense and understanding, and then you can start to like react. And then like you're scouting a guy earlier, a minute before you even move out, and he's got like tanks on the high ground behind a wall, and you're already like, ooh, I'm sensing this might end in that situation. And like that's where really advanced reactions are like, oh, okay, so I am still going to go for the attack, but I'm going to start my infestation pit ahead so I can immediately start a hive once I confirm this is the situation, and then I can get my Vipers a full minute quicker. And then my follow-up attack will have like blinding clouds and abducts and like totally just counter all the siege tanks, right? And that's where like really high level kind of like planning ahead strategy comes from. It's like this real small adjustment of I'm starting the infestation pit before my roach timing moves out, and suddenly you've got a genius strategy, right? But it's the details mixed in there, and that's what kind of really having a dumb headbutt timing does for you. But here we're going Lings, Banes, Roaches, Infestation, Spire, Hydrodent. So much money in so many different paths. We want to keep it really focused on like one big thing, one big attack, chuck all your eggs in one basket and roll the shit over your opponent. And really aim for those mid-game pushes as much as possible. Like no one should ever be getting a fourth base for free in your games, right? That should be very rare that people get fourth bases without there being a lot of big clashes before that point.
It's weird with this game. Almost always around 7-ish. I hit with Mutus, but for some reason, the way this guy was playing, I mean, again, I was reacting to your point earlier. I was like, I'm not going to go Mutus for some reason. Like, I hardly ever don't go Mutus, but I didn't with this guy, and I'm not sure why I chose to. So I
think you're kind of like dancing with shadows this game, where I could tell, like, yeah, it's like because you're afraid of those Hellions, and you kind of overreacted to those earlier as well. I mean, this doesn't look like your standard game. If this was your standard game, I'd be shocked, because you've literally made ultras and lurkers now. Like you've made every single unit in the Zerg arsenal. You made broodlords, like you made everything except the spellcasters. So like that's pretty rare. But yeah, no, I think you just started overthinking things at some point, and that's where like this happens to everyone periodically in StarCraft. You win a game, you see something, you think it means something, but it turns out to be wrong, and you're reacting to things that aren't real or like aren't as much of a commitment as you thought they were in the heat of the moment, right? And in those games, it's important to go, hey, okay, let's just take a breath and like follow my game plan, right? And not be trying to adapt and react to everything, because there is such a thing as being too reactive and trying to like stare at what your opponent's doing to decide what you're doing. And it's like, hey, let's just have a bit more faith in my base default thing to do, and try to make those adjustments a little bit more selective, right? It's like, okay, in this case, I really knew he was doing this. I knew this exact response would be good. That'd be great. But in this game, it wasn't just that you misread what your opponent was doing with like overreacting to the Hellions and then being a bit confused by his style, but it was also like you were going in every different direction. There was no clear like, oh, I'm doing this to counter that. It was, I'm going to open up all the text, and kind of you were trying out ideas, but you weren't really committing to them. It's always better to really commit almost pig-headedly, stupidly to something that doesn't work out and learn from it and go, yeah, that's not good. Let's not do that again. But in this one, it's like, I don't know, man. If you committed really hard to Mutiling Bane, could have totally worked. If you committed really hard to the Roach Hydra, really could have worked, right? If we committed really hard to like Ultraling Bane, maybe did a big flank on this army, could have worked. But we've got like Lurkers, which are a siege unit, Corruptors, which don't really help too much except for like, you know, just helping to kill the Medivacs, a couple of them, and you have like a couple of Ultras, right? So your army's like spread in too many different directions. So I think what we lacked here was commitment. Lots of clever ideas, but like just try to always remember to commit. And that's where planning that ahead, having your counters mapped out, so the next time you're in the scenario, you know exactly what to do, is just going to make it way smoother. So overall, let's start wrapping up because we are out of time. Yeah, we've got your build order, just a few little adjustments with like, hey, let's get that third hatch just a little bit later. Make sure you get your 2 queens out on time, yeah? Also, those two to 4 lings that you just send across the map every game is actually, like, in a game like this, it just totally ruins his build. Rather than that Reaper killing 4 of your drones, you literally delay his command center, force his Reaper to go home, or his Reaper isn't being watched, so it just runs into your queen and dies. And it's like, you're already way ahead at the start, right? So you've already got, you know, just a few small changes to the start can be huge. We're going to try and remember to pull off gas, which is big. You've also got a few mechanical changes that are very important here, right? With like, okay, let's make sure those creep queens are on a key is going to be probably the biggest one. If you do want to start working on control grouping eggs, I think it's pretty fantastic. I think it's very beneficial. But up to you, you've got that whole list of recommendations on that. Let's not focus on it for now. Let's focus on the strategy. Strategically, let's focus on timing attacks that are mapped out for each matchup ahead of time, whether it be a mass roach or a big, maybe I do a 1-1 Ling Bane timing with Bane speed, or even 2-2 with like I've got Mutas out harassing, and I play kind of defensively with Ling Bane, but then I look for a big 2-2 timing or something like that. Like, just trying to have some attacks in mind can be really good. If you're playing something like Mutaling Bane, it's probably not as necessary as a Roach style, because that's like a bit more fluid, and your Mutas are kind of bouncing around the backline, harassing and stuff. But especially if you're playing like Roaches, you got to hit a timing attack off it, right? Like, or you've got to transition, you know, upwards into something else. But so it's really nice to just kind of like have that mapped out ahead of time. Roach timings are beautiful, but yeah, I think it can really work out. If you are playing Mutaling Bane regularly, definitely we'll need to work on the creep spread as well. So that'll go hand in hand with that new creep queen hotkey that we're using every single game.
Okay. I have one question. When do I take all 3 of the drones off of gas, and when do I put them back on?
Standard is usually like 3 minutes 30. So the way I think of it, is put back on with first lava inject. So basically, because you in the main, that first lava inject pops at about 320 or so, 325. So I like to just manually tell those eggs to go back onto the gas. That's how I like to do it. Other people like to think 330, and sometimes they forget and they don't do it till 4 minutes or just after. Doesn't really matter. So anywhere in that range is going to be good for you. Yeah. If you're like, you know, maybe you start doing a faster lair style, or want to do a fast roach push or this or that, obviously you might need a bit more gas, but that's a decent general rule.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, okay,
thank you so much.
No worries, mate. Lots to work on. We'll get way more into the meat and potatoes in the future sessions. As always, we had to spend a lot of time making sure I understood exactly how you played, you know, asking questions there. So now I know how your grid keyboard works and stuff. I think that setup looks pretty good. Review that list of like the control groups that I wrote there in the document, and, you know, make it your own, adjust anything to whatever makes sense for you. Don't feel like you have to copy anyone else's control groups. Everyone has their own weird system. It's just about it making logical sense to you, and that should be awesome.
Making it less complex. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. All right, sick as, mate. Well, good luck, have fun, and save replays. Anything that confuses you, makes you bash your head against the wall, write it down, go, what the hell, this doesn't make sense. That's awesome fuel. Even if you end up figuring out the answer by the time we get in a session, it's like really good just discussion fuel for us to kind of like move that understanding forwards. So yeah, get practicing. Shoot me a message just here on Discord or email or whatever. We can set up the next session whenever you feel like, you know, when you want to do it. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to practicing all this.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, have a good night, brother.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Laters, mate.